Hello everyone and welcome back to Meeting in the Flesh. Here we are with our last suitor, Nyargh. I had a thought a little after I finished Bratton's that for him and Yiestol we went through like a big change. I don't know what's gonna happen with Nyargh. I'm wondering if he's gonna end up being the most normal despite looking like a giant meatball. Or what. Apologize. It's too bad, but I don't want to risk delaying anyone's delivery. I feel a little bad, but I think it would be best to turn them down. I don't want to risk being late on any deliveries. Sorry, Bratton. My schedule's a little tight today, so now's not the best time. Maybe I can meet you after my route's over? Bratton's ears are usually perked up, but they tilt down at that, his tail also drooping to peek out between his legs. It's obvious he's still trying to sound upbeat.
No, it's okay. Don't worry about it.
I do worry about it. Are you sure? I'd be happy to come back here after I'm done with my route. I just don't want to keep anyone waiting. Bratton considers that for a moment before shaking his head. His tail resumes its gentle wagging.
Yeah, it's fine. On second thought, I guess I'm not sure if I'm supposed to be showing you anyway. So I'll get back to you if I get cleared for it.
That'd be great. Thanks for the invitation though, Bratton.
No problem.
He reaches out a massive paw and gives me a gentle pat to the shoulder.
You be careful on your route now, alright?
Will do. The slick of damp ground underfoot gives way to firm rock bed as we near the edge of the park. Oh yeah, here. I'd still been holding Bratton's salt packet and hold it out for him to take.
Right, thanks. Good luck on the rest of your route.
Thanks, I'll see you later. I tighten the bundle under my shoulder to make sure it's firmly in place and head off at a steady jog. Halfway down the block, I turn to glance over my shoulder and catch sight of Bratton's fluffy tail slipping back into the foliage of the park. I can't help wondering what it was that Bratton wanted to show me. Part of me feels like I may have missed something big. But for now, I have to focus on my job. My next delivery is a good few blocks away, so I turn the corner and ramp up into a steady gallop. I'm starting to get a little out of breath. I usually manage to do my entire route at a steady pace, but today's been a day of ups and downs. But at least I've managed to mostly catch up with my usual schedule, even if I can feel my legs starting to ache a little. I slow from a sprint to a jog so I can go down my list of notes. I finished most of my route now, with only a few more blocks to run, which is good. A quick glance up at the sky confirms that the suns are starting to set already, the skies tinging their usual musty green. Starting to get late, which means I'm cutting it a little close. Palpable tension in the air has been rising all day too. There are more people hanging around the streets than usual, some rowdy and causing trouble, others pressed together in quiet intimacy. I've managed to stay ahead of schedule somehow, though not by a huge margin. I should be able to finish my route on time. And I make the mistake of breathing a quiet sigh of relief to myself as I dash past a block of closed storefronts, closed for the eclipse, and round a corner quickly enough that my claws skid on the ground. I almost slam right into the bustling crowd that's loitering around, breathing in huge lungfuls of sweet, honey-scented air. What's going on? It's usually never this crowded. Sorry, excuse me. Passing through. Sorry, I have to get through here. I gingerly squeeze past a crowd of people. It turns out these people have formed a line that trails out from Nyargh's beast store, but the line has grown tangled and messy as it trails out into the streets. Getting past them is a struggle, and more than a few people shoot me a dirty look that I have to pacify by shifting the bundle on my shoulders and clarifying that I'm just here to make a delivery. Most grumble, but grudgingly let me through.
If you could spare some time, would you mind helping me out a little?
I'm a little surprised not about the request itself. Any reasonable person would ask for help managing a store this busy, but because I've never seen Nyargh ask anyone for help before. I can't help feeling a little flattered that he'd ask. That said, I need to think this over for a moment. Reaching back, I test the weight of my bundle with my hands, trying to gauge how much time I would need to deliver all of these before the end of the day. There aren't too many, and I should be able to get to them all in time as long as I rush a little bit. But they're also not terribly close together, and I know my pace slows as I grow tired near the end of the day. I don't have a lot of time to spare. On the other hand, this feels like something important. Even if it's only a small favor that Nyargh's asked of me, the fact that it's coming from someone so quiet and self-sufficient lends that simple request extra weight. What should I do? Help out Nyargh for a bit. I think it would be best if I spared a little time to help Nyargh out. Pride, in part, makes the decision for me. If I stay, my schedule will certainly be tight, but I know that it's not beyond my abilities. I know my delivery pace, and I'm well aware of what I'm capable of. If I use the excuse of a tight schedule to say no to Nyargh here, I know I'd feel a little embarrassed about it later. After all, if Nyargh is asking me to help him at this very important moment, I should do what I can to help him, especially if I know it's within my capabilities. I make the mistake of taking a deep breath. The dizzying scent of honey makes my head spin, and I'm frozen for a moment before I can gather my thoughts. I shake my head, take a shallower breath, and nod firmly. My current thoughts about what might happen make me believe that we might end up getting, like, addicted to honey or something. I don't know. I don't know if it's gonna go, like, dark route. 'Cause being eaten by Yiestol, pretty dark, you know? I think overall, Bratton would be the normal route. Like, what occurred is pretty normal. Maybe not to them specifically, because they're the monsters that got turned into humans. But, like, to a human, it's pretty normal. I shake my head, take a shallower breath, and nod firmly. Alright, I can stay for a bit. If Nyargh had eyes, I think he'd be blinking at me. As is, his own movements pause for a second, his tentacles caught halfway through their actions before abruptly resuming, as if Nyargh wants to hide his surprise and hesitation.
Are you sure?
Of course. You might have to coach me on what to do, but I'm happy to help with whatever I can. I smile as I take off my bundle to stow off to the side beneath the counter where it hopefully won't get trampled. Then I pull back the roomy folds of my cloak to free my hands. It's warm in here. I won't need to be so covered up, and I don't want anything to hinder my movements. Nyargh looks like he needs all the help he can get, so I'd like to be as useful as possible. What should I do? One of Nyargh's mouths licks its lips, and I hear the sound of several throats clearing.
You can start by packing up those bottles.
A tentacle gestures at a shelf stacked with bottles of honey. A pile of pre-cut fabric pieces and a big roll of twine occupies a nearby table. I flash Nyargh a grin, feeling the raw skin on my face crinkle from the gesture. It comes out slightly saccharine, but it feels rare for Nyargh to ever seem pressured, so I want to be reassuring. Leave it to me. I turn towards the shelf without waiting for a response, moving a big armful of bottles to the table so I have everything easily within reach. But faintly, I think I hear Nyargh grunt.
Thanks.
The work ends up being a little harder than I expected. My hands are big and rough and calloused, perfect for finding purchase on the rough streets and spending long hours at a steady gallop. But I'm less used to working like this. The twine, especially, turns out to be a challenge. Wrapping the bottles in fabric is easy enough, but tying the twine off into neat ribbons is difficult. The first few packages I hand over to Nyargh take a little longer than I'd like, and I notice Nyargh sparing 2 tentacles to wrap a few bottles himself in order to keep pace with the orders coming in. When each package takes me 2 or 3 tries to tie a proper ribbon, I can feel frustration starting to seep through me. It must show in my actions because after finishing up another package, Nyargh briefly lays a tentacle over my hand. Okay, building off of what I said earlier, because I'm pretty sure I just made it sound like we're just gonna get addicted and that's it. I'm thinking, like, I don't know, Vil becomes like a queen bee or something like that. And it's fucked up and crazy. I don't know what's gonna happen to us. We just become another mouth. We assimilate once again and we just become another mouth on Nyargh's body. I don't want that to happen. That's lame.
You're doing fine. It's harder if you rush.
Nyargh's voice is a low rumble, finishing off with a click of his teeth. It's neither gentle nor quiet, fighting to be heard over the din in the store. Still, the way his tentacle pats at my wrist twice before returning to work is calming. It helps me figure out how to approach this work. Take a deep breath and calm down. Focus harder on the work. Take a deep breath. Like Nyargh said, rushing won't solve anything. I need to calm down. Eyes closed, I take in a slow, deep breath. Breathing in slowly like this, the sweet scent of honey flows into and over me like a warm blanket, settling heavily over my flickering nerves. It helps me calm down immediately. Alright. I open my eyes and look towards Nyargh, giving him a small nod. He is already back to focusing on his own work, but I think I spot a pair of lips quirking into a slight smile at my response. I think I can handle it. Thanks. How does he see? Echolocation. I think I'm getting used to the work. It should be easier once I fall into a nice rhythm. As I return to focusing on the task at hand, even the murmurs from the crowd eventually fade to a low buzz in the distance. After a while, my hands start moving automatically. Pick up a bottle, wrap it in fabric, bring the twine around it, tie off a neat ribbon. Relaxed by Nyargh's advice and the sweet scent in the air, I find myself working peacefully, my mind wandering comfortably. I even find the time to soothe a stray bee that comes bumbling up to rub against my side. Oh, it's so cute. I want pet. Nyargh doesn't have to tend to packaging bottles after a while, leaving the task to me so he can focus on tending to the customers. Despite the bustle of customers, the atmosphere of the store is warm and comfortable, and I find myself feeling right at home. At some point, a couple of bees had wandered over to inspect me and then fallen asleep at my side. I can feel their fuzzy bodies vibrate slightly with their rapid breaths, the present cushioning warm and soft around me. Absorbed in the moment, I almost lose track of time. It's a gentle touch to the shoulder that grabs my attention, and I look up to see Nyargh turning towards me.
Vil, are you alright on time?
Oh. I glance up towards the clock hanging on the wall behind Nyargh, its feelers ticking away gently with each second. I should leave soon. I'll just finish up what I was doing. I just have a few more of these left to do.
Actually, Vil.
I just grabbed up another bottle and patch of fabric when the low hum of Nyargh's voice gives me pause.
You can leave the wrapping to me, but would you mind grabbing me more bottles from that shelf over there?
He's in the middle of tending to a customer, gently swaddling a trio of bottles in a large square of fabric to serve as a makeshift bag. One tentacle points over my back towards a shelf against the wall that's neatly stocked with bottles upon bottles of honey. It's only on second glance that I realize the stock of bottles behind the counter is running low. Business must have been booming in the time that I was lost to my work. Sure thing.
Thanks.
I clamber to my feet, making sure not to knock anything over as I slip out from behind the counter. The crowd's mostly thinned out, allowing me to move between people more easily as I make my way towards the shelf, and I hike the folds of my cloak up past my elbows once more, just to make sure they don't get in the way. What looks to be a small family is looking over the shelf when I approach it, and I excuse myself as I step past them. The jostling of glass bottles catches the attention of the small child they've brought along, and I look over when I feel eyes on me, realizing then that the child is staring at me. They look awfully displeased, wide mouth flattened into a thin line with just a peak of fangs poking through. Can I help you? I smile a little at the child, just enough to seem friendly without crinkling the raw skin on my face so hard that pus seeps through. The child seems unimpressed, all four eyes squinting at me.
I don't like it here.
The pouting voice is just enough to catch the attention of the parents who look over to me. One gives me an apologetic smile. I smile back before returning my attention to the child. Why not? Doesn't it smell nice in here? A crinkling of the nose and hands clenched tight tells me the answer is no.
No, it smells too much. I don't like the smell.
It's a curious response. I don't think I've ever met anyone who doesn't like the smell of honey. There's a reason it's considered such a universal luxury and treat. One of the parents shakes their head in mild exasperation, but I consider my words for a moment before responding. It's certainly rare for anyone to openly dislike honey, but maybe they'll like it in time. It's alright not to like it. Do they like anything else? What do you like? Well, if they don't like honey very much, then maybe they like something else. After a moment of thought, I crouch down so I'm closer to the child's eye level, keeping my weight carefully balanced on my hands. The child looks at me with mixed curiosity and caution. Then, can I ask what you do like?
What I like?
I nod and wait for them to answer. The child hems and haws, gnawing on their own hand, and I take the opportunity to glance up at the parents. They give me a slightly exasperated smile, no doubt accustomed to dealing with their child's antics, but nudge the child to answer. The child finally extricates spittle-soaked claws from its mouth to tell me.
I like blood more.
I grin widely. I can feel the raw skin on my face stretch from the movement, but the child doesn't seem to mind. That's neat. I really like blood too. Blood salt's one of my favorites.
It's my favorite too. My moms and dad get me some on my birthday.
You're so lucky. That sounds really great. I hope you get a bunch on your next birthday too.
I will.
Okay, wow.
Yeah, I will.
The parents laugh quietly at the firm conviction in the child's voice. Seeming embarrassed, the child quickly turns away and buries their face into their parents' clothes, stamping their feet tight slightly on the floor. Though muffled against the fabric, I can hear the quiet sound of them whining.
Stop laughing.
I settle for grinning to myself as I pile my arms high with bottles of honey and give the parents a small nod as I make my way back to the counter. I can still hear the sounds of the parents quietly chiding the child as I round the corner to where Nyargh is diligently wrapping up 3 bottles of honey at a time.
Looks like you made a friend.
Nyargh speaks up at a low rumble even as he keeps working, and I laugh. I wouldn't know about that, but at least I haven't made any enemies. I get a soft huff in return. For a few moments the air is punctured only by the sounds of wrapping fabric rustling and the rhythmic thump-thump as I carefully put down bottles one by one. When I glance over at the store floor, one of the parents has picked the child up so they can look at one of the higher-up bee cages together.
The regulars.
Oh?
Come by once in a while. Kid never seems too happy. Always felt a little bad about it. So it's good of you to humor them a little.
Well, I didn't do anything special. It feels rare for Nyargh to praise anyone so openly, and I feel oddly sheepish about it. Settling down the last few bottles on the shelf, I quickly look over for any cracks or damage. I just said what anyone else would say.
You'd be surprised.
Another huff from Nyargh, louder this time. I look over to see a brief grit of teeth before he purses his lips.
Sometimes people aren't flexible enough, don't consider that other people think differently. So you did something good for the kid.
His voice is firm. I get the odd feeling that acting too modest right now isn't the right thing to do, so I end up nodding even as I feel my own face warm a little. Thanks. Luckily, it doesn't take much longer to stock the shelf behind the counter. With this many bottles on hand, Nyargh should be able to see out the rest of the day without much trouble, I think. I dust my hands off before grabbing my pack, double-checking the floor to make sure I haven't dropped any salt packets. With how far behind schedule I already am, it would be disastrous if I left behind a delivery packet and had to come back for it. Nyargh, I have to get going. Nyargh's tentacles stop moving as he turns to look at me with his full attention. It makes me feel weirdly self-conscious and my voice catches in my throat for a moment. Is that alright?
Of course.
He gives a solemn nod in response.
Thank you very much, Vil.
Nyargh's voice vibrates deeper than usual. He tends to speak quietly without much emphasis, but his words at the moment feel oddly weighty, like he's saying something he considers very important. I shake my head and give him a smile. It's no problem at all. I'm glad I could help.
You don't need to be so humble. I know you took valuable time out of your route to help me, and I appreciate it greatly. You helped me tremendously.
I'm reminded of the fact that Nyargh usually mans the store alone, always. Even for those who have good energy and stamina, it's unusual for anyone to run a store completely alone, So maybe it means that much more for Nyargh that I decide to stay and help. I really can't afford to lose any more time, so I start adjusting the straps of my pack and the folds of my robe even as I nod. Well, I'm really glad I could help. If you ever need any help on another day, just let me know. Nyargh gives me an almost imperceptible nod, watching as I start to round the corner to leave, but stops me at the last moment.
Vil?
Yeah? Perhaps sensing my need to leave quickly, he answers promptly.
I'd like to show you my appreciation with more than words. If you have time after you finish your route, I'd like it if you came by the store afterwards.
It's a curious proposal. I've never visited Nyargh's store so late. I hesitate for only a moment before grinning and nodding. Sure, I can probably do that, thanks.
Be safe. Good luck on your route.
Thanks. He sees me off without any more fanfare, returning to his work and only sparing one tentacle to give me a wave as I head out the door. I wonder if there's an ending for if I just reject everyone. As I exit the store, a fresh gaggle of customers approaches the door, no doubt looking to make some last minute honey or bee purchases. As rushed as I am, I make sure to hold the door open for them before starting down the street. The sweet smell of honey accompanies for a few paces before slowly losing its grip on me, allowing the bite of plain air to return to my lungs, a reminder of the job I have to do. Still, as I quickly ramp up into a steady gallop, I'm briefly reminded of the way Nyargh had thanked me, the deep rumble of his voice, the intense focus with which he'd regarded me, the gravity of his words. Salt delivery is such a routine job that few people appreciate it on a daily basis, so being thanked so sincerely for anything feels unusual, in a good way. The thought that I was able to help Nyargh in such a meaningful way gives me a warm feeling in the pit of my stomach, and my pace quickens as I wind through the scattering of people on the street. I should keep up the good work so I can end the day feeling good. Time to focus on my route.
Thanks, Vil. Seems like you have a pretty busy day, huh? You're cutting it pretty close.
Yeah, things have been a little hectic today.
I can imagine, since today's the big day and all. Good work. You should go rest up.
Thanks, I will. Have a good night.
You too.
Even smiling feels exhausting after a long day, but I still make sure to wave as I trot off, pawing at the pack to make sure all my deliveries have been taken care of. All done, and with barely a minute to spare, I really did cut things pretty close. At the same time, I don't regret it. It feels like what happened today was pivotal and absolutely worth a bit of extra running. I end up taking the long route back home, backtracking a little bit. I walk past the Overlook office, which continues to watch silently over the city. The spire's eyeballs lazily cast over the landscape, though they blink slowly now and again as if growing tired. I end up taking a long route back home, backtracking a bit. I walk past the Overlook office. I read that part. I always get confused when it changes. I cut through the park. The atmosphere here is different after dark, the spindly trees casting twisting shadows across the uneven ground. The air feels colder too, and it feels different without Bratton's boisterous presence walking by me. I'm feeling quite exhausted by the time I make my way past the row of stores. My feet feel sore, a hot ache working its way through my ankles and up the lengths of my legs, all the way to the pit of my stomach. Even my arms hurt from bracing against the ground. I thought I'd long since grown used to the physical strain of running my route, but today had certainly been a long day. My mind is occupied keeping tally of how many different places my body aches, and I almost walk right to the end of the block before the warm glow of a store window catches my attention. Nyargh's store. His generous invitation races to the forefront of my mind, of course. How could I have forgotten? Even the exhaustion seeping through my body is briefly forgotten, replaced by a small, warm thrill working its way outward from the very core of my chest. I'm a little excited. Almost every other store is closed by now, their lights dim, though a few remain open. I can see the owners bustling inside, neatening up their displays to close up for the night. Nyargh's storefront is the only one still lit up, the warm glow of honeyed lights filtering out past the glass and spilling onto the ground below. As I draw closer, I can see the faint movements of a few restless bees moving about in their cages, but the store is otherwise empty. The small handwritten sign on the door has been flipped from open to closed. Maybe Nyargh also forgot? I drift towards the door, trying to peek through the little window to see if he's inside, but it swings open before I can get that close.
There you are. I was worried I'd made you too late to finish your route.
I shake my head, smiling. It's kind of him to worry. I managed to finish it on time, though. It was admittedly a close call. Today's been an interesting day, but I'll be happy if I don't have to run that many deliveries again in one day. Nyargh nods sympathetically before holding the door open wider. The smell of honey comes wafting outwards, and I can hear the faint chittering of a pair of bees arguing with each other. Some of the ache in my muscles seems to melt away already, and I eagerly stumble forward through the open doorway. Thanks, Nyargh.
Don't mention it.
I've never seen Nyargh's store so empty before. The atmosphere feels completely different, now that it's just the two of us in here, much more peaceful.
Ew, I don't like that sound, though.
Nyargh lets most of the bees out of their cages to roam now that the floor is empty and there's less danger of them getting squished or trampled by customers, and it's a pleasure seeing them bumble about. Some cuddle together in a corner dozing, others wander about chittering at each other and exploring familiar territory. A pair near the entrance are fighting, clumsily swiping at each other with their legs and making angry buzzing noises. Nyargh coolly separates the arguing pair, tucking one under a tentacle each as he passes by. They calm down quickly. I feel so different here after closing time. I state what must be obvious, but Nyargh still humors me with a nod. He leads the way to the back of the store, past rows of empty shelves and open cages. A few bees have opted to remain in their cages, sleeping or cleaning themselves. One chirps at me when I approach, and I make sure to give it a pat on the head as I pass by. There's a door at the far end of the store in a corner that's not immediately visible from the entrance, and Nyargh pulls it open. Just inside the doorway is a hanging curtain of yellow beads, providing one more layer of protection between the storefront and what must be Nyargh's private area.
Go ahead.
A pair of tentacles reach over to me to pull aside a few strands of beads. They rustle against each other, giving off a faint smell. It's pleasant, like honey, but more muted and with the undercurrent of something woodsy and natural.
They're made of beeswax.
Nyargh must have noticed me looking at them curiously, because he gives a quiet explanation as he shifts a strand of beads over his tentacle.
The smell is a little more mellow than honey, helps me calm down after a long day.
They're great. Indeed, the little hallway past the doorway feels calming to walk down. The air still feels warm, but without the intensity of the storefront. The lights are dimmer, the air less saturated and sweet, and the bustle of the streets outside feels further away. A small stairwell branches off to the right, but Nyargh gestures me past it towards an open doorway at the end of the hallway. And as I step through that open doorway, I can't help pausing and blinking. Nyargh's private quarters aren't quite what I imagined. Definitely a pleasant surprise. Whoa! Dude! Your place looks awesome!
Go ahead and take a seat.
I sink into the plush seating, feeling the material compress under my weight. There's a natural warmth to the material, and the way it molds around my body is wonderfully comfortable. I find myself giving a content sigh as I lean back, enjoying the way the seating gently holds my weight, swaying gently. Nyargh takes a chance to deposit the two bees he's been carrying onto my lap. They seem to have forgotten all about their little spat during the short walk from the storefront, now content to sit next to each other. One promptly begins crawling around the couch, antennae patting over the material in search of the most comfortable spot to sit. The other seems happier sitting where it's been placed, starting to groom itself with small humming noises. The rhythmic flicker of feelers and wings over my skin tickles.
Let me go get something to drink.
Nyargh heads towards the doorway at the end of the room, and I make a cursory move to sit up. Should I help?
I can do it. You should relax for a few minutes.
Admittedly, I'm feeling so comfortable at the moment that the prospect of getting up isn't terribly appealing. I sheepishly nod before sinking back into the couch, feeling gentle vibrations against my thigh as the two bees hum, like purring cats. This might be my first time in Nyargh's private quarters, but the atmosphere is incredibly comfortable. I'm not usually the type to immediately feel comfortable in an unfamiliar environment, but I can't feel any of that usual tension when I'm sitting here on Nyargh's couch, where the atmosphere is sweet and cozy and warm. Past the doorway, I can hear the gentle sounds of a heating organism grumbling to life, followed by the low drone of Nyargh's voice as he convinces it to quiet down. The wandering bee threatens to slide off the couch in search of something, so I absently pull it close, nestling its fluffy body against my own. I'm so curious about, like, a lot of the world stuff. Like, the items that they use. Because, like, a lot of them are bugs. Just, like, a lot of the biological stuff for some of these people, because, like, it's very, it's incredibly different. Like, I don't understand how Yiestol's kind even, has children. It might be, like, there's a gecko that, even though it's a female, it basically, like, makes a clone of itself. And then Nyargh, just, how does anything of him even work? And I'm returning to the conversation the two other people had about, like, what he eats, because apparently he doesn't eat salt, so what does he eat? The wandering bee threatens to slide off the couch in search of something, so I absently pull it close, nestling its fluffy body against my own. The bee buzzes only briefly in protest before seeming to settle down. The one in my lap, too, has fallen into the steady rhythm of grooming itself, and the tickle of its antennae brushing across my stomach now and again is comforting in a weird way. It feels nice. It's the smell of honey from somewhere very close that pulls me back to consciousness. I open my eyes to the sight of Nyargh settling himself into a chair across from me. Sorry, I didn't mean to fall asleep. My voice comes out groggier than I expected, and I can feel my cheeks heat up as I sit up and rub my face. The bee that I've been cuddling buzzes in complaint at the fact that I dared to move, but it quiets down again once I've settled into position. Ah, very cat-like.
Don't worry about it. You look exhausted. It must have been a long day for you.
I guess you could say that. I rub my eyes to chase away the last feathery tendrils of sleep, and then realize that Nyargh placed a small but elaborate tray on the table between us. One of the bees eagerly crawls over, snatching up something from the small platter of snacks before either of us can stop it. The biscuit crumbles in its mandibles, stopping it from gobbling up the whole snack, though, and I gently tug it back onto my lap. Cat dog. Nyargh nods approvingly.
Thanks. They get real eager about stealing food when they can.
I can imagine with how good it smells. What is it?
Tea.
You didn't need to make it so elaborate. I do the polite thing acting modest, but I'm sure there's a hungry edge to my expression that betrays my words. Everything smells marvelous. Steam wafts from the teapot when Nyargh lifts the lid to check the color of its contents, filling the air with a sweet, pervasive warmth. I reflexively take a deep breath, and the tiny beads of moisture cling to the inside of my nose. My head almost feels a little fuzzy, and I watch transfixed as Nyargh begins pouring out the tea. It's viscous, like tree sap, amber with a tinge of reddish-brown as it pools in the cup. It smells delicious, but not as cloyingly sweet as I expected from the steam.
Go ahead.
I must have looked awfully eager because Nyargh gestures with a tentacle before pouring his own cup. Thanks. I place the cup to my lips and take a small sip. A dark, bitter taste spreads across my tongue first, though it's soon chased after by a wonderful, mellow sweetness that does just enough to take the edge off the flavor. The two aspects of the tea work in perfect harmony, making it a drink that's awfully hard to put down. I look up to see Nyargh practically dumping a cupful in his mouth, then pouring himself another cup. To be fair, the cup does look rather small in his tentacle and compared to the bulk of his body. What kind of tea is this? I'm sure I've never had it before. It's amazing. Nyargh gives a small nod as if approving of my delight.
Root and worm leaf tea. The leaves are steeped in honey for a long time before being brewed. Gives it a nice balance of flavors.
He drinks more slowly from his second cup. A deep rumbling noise buzzes from the core of his body as if in appreciation.
I added a little honey to it after brewing. I hope it's not too sweet for your taste.
It's wonderful. I blurt out the answer immediately because it's true. But this looks expensive. You didn't have to. Now that I look closely, I recognize the snacks as salt biscuits, salt and bone powder blended together, then baked to create a light and crunchy texture. A sheen of amber honey covers their tops. They look mouth-watering, but the fact that salt biscuits alone are a fairly pricey treat gives me pause. Not to mention all the honey. Even if Nyargh owns his own bee store, it feels strange casually eating this much honey. But Nyargh only shakes his head.
It's my treat, Vil. Eat as much as you'd like.
There's a pause before he continues as if he needs a moment to choose his words.
I'm sure you've noticed, but it's not often that I ask for any help around the store. I don't need it often, so I've grown quite bad at asking for it, so I appreciate your willingness to help at the last minute.
You do look pretty used to handling everything by yourself. It must help having so many hands. I give him an admiring smile before finally picking up a salt biscuit. I would have been loath to admit it, but my mouth had been watering the moment I spotted them, and as long as I have Nyargh's blessing, I'm excited to try one out. But even you would have been overwhelmed on a day like this. I'm not sure I've ever seen a crowd like that. Anyone would have needed your help. Or would have needed help. I take a small bite of the biscuit, closing my eyes as I savor the flavor. The familiar sharp sting of salt is undercut by the softer, chalkier taste of bone powder brought together by the sweet notes of honey. I find myself shoving the whole thing in my mouth without a second thought. It's the most delicious thing I've eaten in a while, I'm sure. It's only the feeling of biscuit filling my mouth that reminds me of my manners, and I cover my mouth with my hand as I chew, trying not to drool from the corner of my mouth. But when I glance up, Nyargh seems lost in thought, his various mouths closed or slightly open, his tentacles holding his teacup aloft before him, but not moving. I'm halfway to I'm halfway to surreptitiously reaching for a second biscuit when Nyargh suddenly speaks up.
I was surprised. I didn't expect that many people.
Really? I start to pull my hand back, but Nyargh picks up the biscuit and hands it to me in my stead. I feel a little flustered and try to damn it. Damn it! And try to assuage my gluttonous guilt by giving a few tiny crumbs of the biscuit to the bees shuffling around me. Nyargh's told me before that bees shouldn't eat too much salt, but tiny pieces as treats is permissible. The bees chitter in delight, eagerly crunching on their treats.
I expected a crowd since the eclipse is coming up, but I didn't expect it to be that big, especially with my reputation.
It takes me a moment to figure out what he means. Oh, you mean those people who gossip about you? Nyargh nods, finally moving his teacup and pouring its contents into one of his upper mouths. The tongue emerges afterward to lick his lips, one of his other mouths smacking his lips in satisfaction. He moves to pour himself a third cup as he speaks.
I don't address it, but I know what people say about me, and I figured it would keep people away from the store, but that didn't seem to be the case, so I was caught off guard by how many people came by today.
I take my time with my second biscuit, chewing slowly. After overhearing the gossipers so many times, I can easily recall what they said amongst themselves, something about Nyargh actually sucking the energy out of people. Eyebrow wiggle. I have to fight the urge to roll my eyes even now. I instead focus on considering what to say. I chew, swallow, then take a sip of my tea as I organize my thoughts. I don't believe those rumors. The people who gossip are just inconsiderate jerks. People are too quick to gossip about things they don't know. People are quick to gossip. I don't think it's right to gossip in the first place, and don't believe any of those rumors. I rearrange the words in my head once more, considering them carefully. I think people are just too quick to gossip about things they don't understand. It's not right of them to spread rumors like that, but I also think it's not really worth paying attention to, especially since I don't think anyone will believe rumors like that. Nyargh purses his lips in seeming thought for a moment before giving a small nod. That's quite a level-headed assessment. I'm not sure if it's meant as a compliment or not, and a twinge of unease prickles at my spine. Well, that's not to say you're wrong to be flustered or feel annoyed. I think that's perfectly justified. I've never been in your position, not even close to anything like it, so I can't pretend to understand how you feel. But I just meant, I doubt those people are even thinking very hard about what they're saying, or they wouldn't be spreading such ridiculous rumors. I don't think they mean any ill, especially if they're still at your store considering buying things from you, so if they're just saying empty things, then it's not worth the effort of worrying about them. It's sort of beneath you in a way.
Vil.
I must have been a little flustered because those words spill out before I could stop them. Nyargh's interruption is gentle but firm, and it halts me in my tracks.
I understand what you mean. Thank you.
I must show in my face that I'm not entirely sure if those thanks are warranted because he continues patiently.
I think you're correct on all fronts. I do feel frustrated about those people. I do get annoyed at them. But I also know it wouldn't be right to condemn them for something that ultimately doesn't affect me very much. I don't know of their circumstances after all. Who knows, maybe those people have been hurt in the past by something or the other. It would be insensitive of me to assume that they have cruel intentions when they're only being wary.
I nod. It's very much like Nyargh to consider the matter so calmly and maturely.
I dislike people who are quick to judge others, you see.
Shifty eyes.
And it puts me at ease to see there are people like you who try to see things from multiple perspectives, so thank you.
Nyargh's overt praise is enough to make me feel a little embarrassed, and I can feel a faint heat rising in my cheeks even as I shake my head. I didn't really say or do anything special, but as long as you feel better, I'm glad. For what it's worth, I don't think you would ever do anything to hurt people, so I would never pay attention to those sort of rumors. I believe in you. Several of Nyargh's mouths widen into toothy grins, and before I can react, he reaches out with a pair of tendrils, winding them around me. Their grips are warm and gentle, firm without being rough, molding perfectly around my shoulders as he gives me a hug.
Thanks, Vil. I truly appreciate it.
The tentacles squeeze once more, pulsing against my arms before withdrawing. I'm not sure I've ever seen Nyargh make such an affectionate gesture before, and it feels all the more special. Perhaps because it's such a rare moment, Nyargh looks somewhat embarrassed, clearing his throat as he withdraws his tentacles.
But Vil, as much as I appreciate your trust, I can't pretend to be totally innocent.
Huh?
What?
For one moment, I wonder if the rumors are true. Nyargh, perhaps sensing my hesitation, shakes his head.
The rumors aren't true, of course, but I do have an idea of where they originated. Gossip usually don't spring out of thin air, after all.
It's somewhat of a shock to hear. Ask what happened, remain silent, lighten the mood.
Well, now I'm curious.
Surely there's a story there. I should ask for clarification before making any assumptions. Can I ask what caused the rumors then? There's a pause before Nyargh nods.
It wasn't anything grand or dramatic, but you know how rumors can be. People like to gossip and rumors tend to change as they're passed from person to person. Something small and insignificant can grow rapidly under the right circumstances.
Nyargh gives a small sigh, one of his tentacles raising to knead at a spot of soft flesh between two of his mouths.
I trust you're not the type to misunderstand what I'm saying.
I nod quietly. Still, Nyargh hesitates for a moment longer. One of the bees that had been keeping me company seems to be growing bored as it begins crawling away in search of excitement. Nyargh picks it up in two of his tentacles, stroking its back to calm it down. It responds by giving a long, low drone of contentment, vibrating away in his hands. Thoughtfully brushing the end of his tentacle against the bee's neck, Nyargh works through his thoughts for a moment longer as I wait patiently. It's rare to see Nyargh open up about himself like this, so it must be something he's deliberated over for a long time. I don't want to rush him.
I dislike the taste of salt.
Oh, my first thought is that it?
Do you find that anticlimactic?
Nyargh's voice is quiet and calm, his hand continuing to stroke down the bee's back as if to keep himself anchored. No, it's not that. I guess I did expect something a little bigger if it was the start of all those rumors about you. After all, the rumors are a little nasty, and your reason seems pretty innocuous. But if I think about it, I guess it makes sense that people might fixate on it. Because we all need salt to live. Without salt, we wouldn't be able to sustain itself. Ourselves? Even the hardiest individuals I know wouldn't be able to last more than 2 weeks without at least a little salt, whether it's from a block or an indirect source. So for someone to actively dislike salt would be quite strange, like someone who actively dislikes breathing. I've always known it's a rather unusual trait, though there are a few of my kind, mostly my relatives. We've always been careful to keep it discreet, but for all of us it gets out sooner or later. He sighs, sounding somewhat exasperated. The bee in his grasp looks up, its buzzing coming to an abrupt stop. Thanks to it, Nyargh realizes he's stopped petting the bee, and promptly resumes. Only then the bee settles back down, spoiled and content. Trying not to be distracted from the topic on hand, I sit forward. Can I ask how people found out?
It would be fairly obvious if anyone were to see me eating.
Of course, with Nyargh's many mouths, any sign of a frown or grimace would be pretty evident.
Which is why I always eat in private, of course, but an impatient customer once barged into the store during my break. I must have forgotten to lock the door. He promptly saw me struggling with my salt and asked if something was wrong. I'm sure he meant well, but I was startled and handled the situation poorly. I said the salt had gone bad, but he took a taste and quickly assessed that the salt was fine. Hey, that's my salt! Why are you licking my salt block? Back off! He must have been able to guess that it was a deeper, more fundamental issue that I had with the salt. Rumor of it spread quickly afterward. I know him. He was not a malicious person, but secrets can rarely remain secrets for long. He must have blurted it out to someone as something interesting he'd recently found out. He sighs again, but this time he remembers to keep petting the bee. It continues to vibrate, perfectly oblivious to its master's exasperations. I, however, can't claim to be so ignorant, and so I deliberate over how to respond. Sympathize, condemn, propose a solution, ask how he feels. I already know how he feels. He said it, right? I'm not gonna propose a solution. And I'm not gonna condemn them. Sympathize, I suppose? First and foremost, I want to sympathize with his plight. I'm sorry, that must have been really tough. Disliking salt is such a small and harmless thing, but I guess once it became a rumor, it grew out of control. Nyargh gives a quiet grunt, lips pressed together thinly. He seems to ruminate over his thoughts for a long moment before he gives a subtle nod. It wasn't a good situation, I will admit. But it wasn't devastating either. It's something I could take into stride and move on from. I also know that the rumor's just a rumor and not everyone believes it. And it helps that there are people like you who steadfastly ignore the rumors and believe in me. I'm always grateful for your thoughtfulness, Vil, though I've probably been bad at expressing it. Thank you. I feel oddly flustered, feeling my cheeks warm as I shake my head. I didn't do anything that deserves thanks. It's just that you're a good friend and I trust you. I care about how you feel. Almost imperceptibly, Nyargh smiles, the flesh around his mouth crinkling subtly as his lips quirk. Silence hangs in the air for a moment before Nyargh looks up out the window. The skies are almost completely dark outside, save the flickering pinpoints of light from other homes nearby. It's growing late, now that I think about it. I might have kept you a bit long. Sorry, it was mostly me talking about myself. You don't have anything to apologize for. I hurry to respond even as I start getting to my feet. I'm really glad I got to know you better. You're kind to say that to someone so boring. You're not boring at all, Nyargh, I mean it. Nyargh gives a short laugh. It's a louder noise than I expected, and both bees are alerted by it, hopping to the floor and starting to bumble around in circles. You really are interesting, Vil. I'm glad to have a friend as you. And with that, he scoops up both bees, one tentacle for each, firmly holding them to his sides so they don't try to wriggle away, before reaching out to pull aside the curtain of beads. Let me see you out. He's very careful about making sure his bees are comfortable and safe, and about locking up the store as he exits. You don't need to walk me home, you know. Of course, but I would like to. You are my guest and I appreciate your company. Making sure you get home safely is the right thing to do. Nyargh says it with a straight face in a very matter-of-fact way, but his words still send a warm glow of diffusing through my chest. Well then, I won't decline. Thank you. Two of his tendrils engage the Keterin lock, as a third tugs at the door, making sure it's firmly in place. Shall we get going? We walk mostly in silence. The streets aren't usually quite this empty at this time in the evening, but it seems a lot of people are resting up for the eclipse. Either that, or they're busy formulating plans and preparing to make their big decision. All around us we can hear the murmur of people speaking in their homes, the tap-tap of people fidgeting with objects, and the muffled sounds of footsteps. But we don't see anyone else, save a stray figure passing by here and there. It's peaceful. When I look up at our two moons, the tranquility seems everlasting. It almost makes it hard to believe the eclipse will really happen. Still no real plans for the eclipse? There's a pause before Nyargh slowly shakes his head. Me neither. But I do hope the day goes smoothly for the both of us. Of course, I also hope the same. I jerk awake to the sound of my alarm beetle buzzing. I immediately close my eyes and roll back over, burying my face into the pillow. The desire to go back to sleep is tremendous, which is pretty unusual. I almost never have trouble waking up in the morning, but my limbs still hurt a little bit after all the sprinting yesterday. My thoughts drift to the time I'd spent at Nyargh's place, to the incredible warmth and intimacy in that atmosphere, and the thought gently rouses me. I gently rub my face before sitting up. The thought of leaving the salt plant so early in the day, and empty-handed at that, is almost off-putting. I can't remember the last time I took a day off so suddenly. The shop is just habit to me, and I stand in place watching the rest of the plant for a few moments. What are you waiting for?
Oh, nothing. The boss huffs out a sigh and makes his mask puff out.
Go do something nice, kid. Special day and all. Isn't there anyone you want to spend the eclipse with?
For some reason, my thoughts immediately go to Nyargh. He's at the store as usual, I assume, tending to his bees. Maybe I should pay him a visit. Right. I will. I wonder why I didn't think of that sooner. Even if I'm not a big believer in the eclipse as a pivotal day in one's life, it's still a special day. It would be nice to spend the day doing something relaxing, and I can think of a few places nicer than Nyargh's store. The boss seems ready to turn his attention back to his work, but he looks up promptly when I call out to him. The streets are abuzz with activity as I head towards Nyargh's store. The area near the stores is always moderately populated, of course, but everything feels different today. People are clustered in groups, many talking amongst themselves instead of bustling in and out of stores. Many establishments, too, seem to have given up on operating in their usual fashion instead of shutting down completely or flinging their doors open to throw portions of their product out at a jittery crowd. A store selling blood samples flings its door open just as I'm passing by, and I'm almost knocked down by the crowd that rushes in. I manage to duck out of the way just before the proprietor begins lobbing small bladders of blood out the door. Some burst open upon impact, splashing people with wide sprays of pungent red. A delicious smell begins to fill the air, and the crowd cheers as the storekeep announces,
"This is but a minuscule sample of the very rare stock we've procured today for your very special day. Earth whale blood, still warm, brought fresh from the city across the desert. Shortly we will begin an auction for this incredible valuable stock. Truly an item worth procuring for the celebration of an eclipse."
Part of me is curious, of course. My mouth is watering slightly just from the smell in the air, but this is not where I should be. And the auction of rare blood samples, though interesting, is not something I want to spend too much time on. Not today. I step out of the way as several more people run past me, eager to join the crowd that's growing before the blood store's entrance, and turn the corner. The sweet scent of honey immediately washes over me. It's a softer, gentler scent than the immediate metallic tang of blood, but it's one that's stronger, slowly seeping past the sharp taste in the air and enveloping me softly. There's something deeply comforting about the smell, rather like Nyargh's present, I think. Behind me, I can still hear shouts and cheers, but I pay them no mind and instead approach the door to Nyargh's store. Will open later. What's this music? A handwritten sign leached onto the curtain-covered window stops me in my tracks. In all the time I've delivered to Nyargh's store, I've never once seen him fail to open his store at the usual time. My first thought is that he decided to take this day off for some justified rest and relaxation, but the sign says later as opposed to tomorrow. The rowdiness of the crowd behind me sends a small prickle of worry racing down my spine, and I uneasily rap on the window. Nyargh, are you there by any chance? I dearly hope nothing's happened to him. And within moments I hear the muffled sounds of movement past the door, followed shortly by the click of the Keratin lock's horn sliding back into its casing. Vil? The door opens a crack just enough that I can see Nyargh's mouths murmuring my name. His voice is quiet. Sorry to bother you, I was just surprised. I don't think I've ever seen the store closed at this time. Is everything alright?
Yeah, everything's fine. Thank you for worrying.
It's certainly an unusual situation, but Nyargh's tone of voice is calm and unruffled. Maybe I'd worried over nothing. So I nod and decide to give Nyargh a parting greeting before I leave. Say you'll drop by later, tell him not to do anything too strange, ask him to get in touch if anything comes up. Drop by later. Ask him... I'll drop by later. If he plans on opening the store later, then just dropping by then might be best. Well, I'll head off for now then, but I'll drop by later when you open the store. Not for any specific business, but it would be nice to spend some time with you today if you don't mind. I grin and Nyargh gives another small nod.
That would be nice.
And with that said, I turn to leave.
Vil, wait.
Nyargh's voice remains somewhat quiet, but there's a firmness to it that easily cuts through the distant hubbub on the streets. I stop in my tracks and look back to him. Yeah?
Actually,
he's quiet for a moment longer before continuing.
If you aren't terribly busy, would you like to come in? The streets seem busy, so maybe it would be best for you to wait inside until that crowd disperses a little.
He must have caught sight of the crowd past my shoulder. People are still pushing their way to the front of the crowd before the blood sample store, shouting out bids for the treasured container of earth whale blood. Admittedly, I don't look forward to wading through that crowd. The store is completely empty and quiet. Nyargh's establishment is so popular that I've never seen it without at least a few customers. It's an odd feeling standing in the store surrounded by the peaceful hum of drowsy bees and the gentle scent of honey, without the usual presence of people wandering around looking at the wares. Thanks for letting me in.
Of course, don't mention it.
A good number of cage doors are open. Some bees remain in their homes cleaning themselves or sleeping. Others wander about the store, waddling around the floor and inspecting their surroundings. One bumps into my leg and I pick it up. It might be the same bee from the other night. Are the bees supposed to be wandering around right now?
I let them walk around in the mornings before I open up. It keeps them calmer during the day, if they get some of the energy out of the systems earlier.
I see. I carry the bee with me as I continue looking around the store, letting it chew on a fold of my cloak. The atmosphere of the store might feel a little different without any guests, but it also feels very familiar and comforting. The calm air, the well-used furniture, the clean floor. Nyargh, meanwhile, is seated by the counter with a tiny paper portion of salt. Bees! It's the tiniest portion of salt I've ever seen. It looks like an eighth of a block maybe, probably less. My first instinct is to look away in case Nyargh doesn't want to be seen eating, but I can't help pondering it curiously for a moment. Nyargh must have caught me staring because he nudges the minuscule portion of salt with the tip of a tentacle.
You got me in the middle of my breakfast, you see.
Oh, sorry. Should I wait over there at the back of the store?
There's no need. It won't be much longer.
I decide to turn away, absently stroking the bee in my arms. But I can't help noticing that, despite what he said, Nyargh doesn't eat anymore. There's no rustling of crumbling salt particles, no crunching between teeth. When I glance over again, the tiny salt pile hasn't changed at all, and Nyargh seems to be staring out the window, mouth slightly open, as if in deep thought. The thought occurs to me that perhaps he invited me into the store for a reason. What should I say, though? Ask if he's feeling alright, ask if he's planning on eating you.
I've already been through this, sir. Please. Are you planning on eating me? Because I don't really want to deal with that again.
Ask if there's something on his mind. Ask if there's a reason he let you in. Something on your mind? Penny for your thoughts? The conversation from the previous night still fresh on my mind. I wonder if there's something on his mind. Nyargh, is there something bothering you? It seems his mind was elsewhere. There's a pause before he realizes what I said.
This and that, I suppose. It's nothing to worry about.
He doesn't manage to sound entirely convincing, but I also don't want to press him too hard. Well, alright. If you're sure.
But what made you think so?
Well, it's not a big deal, but I just noticed you weren't eating. I wasn't sure if maybe you were bothered by something. Nyargh doesn't answer. Instead, there's just the gentle rustling sound of him pushing a crumbling piece of salt around its paper container. It falls apart, sandy particles of salt scuffing about the smooth paper beneath his touch.
It's nothing to worry about. I just don't have much of an appetite at the moment, I suppose. All of the noise and energy outside has thrown me off my rhythm somewhat. I don't eat a large amount in the first place, so it isn't anything to worry about.
I see. I glance outside the window. There's only a small gap in the curtain, so it's hard to make out the entirety of the blood sample store, but from the way people are still clamoring out on the street, eyes directed towards that storefront and shouting, it's easy to tell the auction is still ongoing. It's easy to understand how the constant bustle might cause Nyargh a good deal of stress. That's understandable, but I do hope it all dies down before long. You always work hard, so you need to be extra careful about taking care of yourself. And what would your bees do if you got sick? I smile as I hold of the bee in my arms. It wriggles its legs in the air, wings fluttering in indignity as it casts about. Evidently, this one doesn't like being held up in that fashion, so I quickly go back to cradling it in my elbow. It briefly gnaws at my fingers in retaliation before settling back down. So maybe don't push yourself too hard, but just make sure to eat enough to keep you going. Nyargh regards me in silence for a long moment. I get the distinct feeling that he's about to say something, that something very important is at the very tip of his tongue. Nyargh? A ting of worry creeps into my voice, and I draw a step closer to the counter. I kept a little distance, wanting to keep from crowding him as he ate, but I feel like it's no longer the time for that. It feels like I need to be closer to Nyargh right now to unravel what it is that has him so distracted today. Are you sure you're alright?
Vil,
Yeah? I find myself standing up a little straighter. There's a distinct edge to Nyargh's voice, almost like he sounds angry, and it catches me completely off guard. So what he says next is completely unexpected. I'm sorry. I lied to you. I lied to you indirectly when I said my dislike of Sol is the only reason those rumors about me exist.
I can't believe this. I trusted you and you lied to me.
The sudden confession is admittedly kind of worrying, but the worry is not just for myself. In the time that I've known him, Nyargh has always been quiet but frank and considerate, never the type to lie just for personal gain. There must have been a significant reason for him to have lied to me. As if sensing the sudden tension in the air, the bee I'd been holding starts to squirm. Whoa, why is that so loud? As if sensing the sudden tension in the air, the bee I'd been holding onto starts to squirm, its wings flapping against my arms. I crouch down to watch it skitter away, joining a few of its friends where they sit together near a heating vent and bask in the warm air. Alright, thank you for telling me. I look up at Nyargh, choosing each word carefully. Then, if it's alright with you, could you tell me the real reason the rumors exist? Nyargh remains quiet. An uncomfortable silence settles over the both of us, weighing down on us. Then he moves toward the window. As he approaches it, he reaches out a tentacle and pulls the curtain completely shut. The interior of the store is a little darker without the little gap. Sweats in fear. But his tentacle lingers afterward, touching briefly against the glass through the curtain before withdrawing. In Truthville. When he does speak up, his voice is quiet, almost enough to be drowned out by the commotion outside. As if realizing that, he moves back away from the window and towards the counter where his salt remains forgotten. I follow suit, getting to my feet and drawing close to better listen to him. It's just in time to hear him continue. In Truthville, I am a manner of parasite. I don't devour people, it's nothing of that sort. But I do get my sustenance from other people. I only need a tiny amount of salt as a supplement to keep my body healthy, but I could survive for weeks without any salt. I'm very different from you and from almost everyone else. Someone who doesn't need salt. I've never even heard of it before. I can't help staring, and it takes me a long moment to drop my gaze down to the tiny amount of salt sitting on the counter. No wonder Nyargh got so few deliveries compared to most others his size. I see. That's pretty incredible, but then, if you don't need salt, what do you live off of? Especially since you say you're a parasite. Energy. Energy? Nyargh nods as if confirming something very mundane, like the price of one of his products or the weather outside. But in contrast to his steadfast demeanor, his voice remains quiet and tense. I can tell he's told very few, if any other people about this, and it spurs me to focus all the more on this very important confession. The big change is that we die at the end. We actually just die. When people are excited or ecstatic, they expend a small amount of energy in the air. It's similar to how the body produces heat. That energy lingers in the air and I inhale it to absorb it back into my body. Me and my kind, I'm sure there are many others who are similar to us at first glance, but we're unique in that aspect. We have many mouths to better comb the atmosphere for that energy, and the core of our bodies is made to efficiently absorb that energy like water. And so I live off of others, a parasite. That doesn't sound quite right. The decisive response slips from my mouth before I can stop myself. Rather than parasite, it sounds more like a symbiotic relationship. Would that still be a parasite? I don't think it would, because parasite usually connotates. Is that connotates? I like using big words that I don't know. Okay, yeah. That usually connotates something like negative. Symbiosis. Interaction of two different typically advantage of both. Yeah, it's more of a symbiotic relationship rather than a parasitic one, because a parasite would be like they get something, but the host gets nothing, and the symbiosis is a lot closer to what we know currently. he feeds off of energy from people, but he also gives to them in the way of selling honey to everyone and all that. So it's not as negative as he is portraying it. The decisive response slips from my mouth before I can stop myself. Nyargh turns towards me, slightly demanding that I continue, and I feel vaguely embarrassed. My face feels a little hot as I scuff a hand through my hair, gingerly pulling strands away from where they've stuck to the pus on my face. I mean, I've known parasitic species, admittedly not a lot of them, but they always need something more directly from their host, don't they? Whether it's blood or hair or chitin. I know parasites can have a bad reputation if they're selfish, but most will compensate the host in some way, so I don't think parasites are in the wrong either. They're just doing what they have to survive. But regardless, what you're saying sounds different. It's harmless, isn't it?
Is it, Vil?
Nyargh shakes his head gently. The lax way his tendrils rest upon the countertop seems oddly melancholy, and I reach out to rest my hand on one. If he notices the gesture, Nyargh doesn't show it, only continuing quietly.
I thought the same when I was younger, but I'm afraid it's not so simple, because I require people to be excited or happy in order to sustain myself. My motives are always questioned. If people know that I benefit from their happiness, then they'll often question my reasons for doing anything. Trusted friends are different, of course. Those who know me well know that sustenance is not so high up on my list of priorities. But I can't expect every stranger, every customer, every acquaintance to know me to the same degree. Every person who came to know about this trait of mine questioned whether I actually cared about their well-being and happiness, or if I was simply hungry and wanted to benefit from their happiness. Take this store, for instance. It would be dishonest of me to say I don't benefit from the joy people get upon entering a bee store and bathing in the scents. The delight fills me in a way you can't imagine. I've almost never gone hungry since the store started doing well. But at the same time, I don't run the store just to fill my belly. If I were to change by some magic and suddenly need to eat salt like everyone else, I would still keep the store open until my death. I've loved bees since I was younger, and it has always been my dream to spread that love to other people. So to have that dream of mine be shadowed by doubt.
He inhales deeply, sucking in the air in between two mouthfuls of gritted teeth. Other mouths have their lips pulled thin, and I can sense an undercurrent of frustration in his core. I gently rub at his tentacle, wanting to calm him down, and he finally seems to notice.
Okay, I'm feeling a little more like, oh, we're not gonna be eaten or anything. Whew! Dodged a bullet.
He rests one of his other tentacles on my hand, and it seems to calm him down.
I moved far away from my hometown as soon as I was able and settled down here. I took care not to let anyone know of my nature, and thus I was able to cultivate this store and watch everyone be happy with my bees and honey. I regret nothing.
Nyargh's voice peters off with a long exhale. I need a few moments to digest this information. It's a lot. It explains a lot. I'd always thought Nyargh was a rather secretive person, but it makes sense he would keep to himself if he wanted to protect his secret. I can see why people might treat him differently after finding out about this secret. They might not be cruel, but their treatment of him would be different at the very least. It must have been hard. Nyargh gives the smallest of nods, mouths closed. So I decide to make my move. I walk around the counter and embrace him. I'm not tall enough to reach the core of his body, of course, even if I stand up on the tips of my claws and strain upwards. But at least I can wrap my arms around his tentacles and hold them close. I'm sorry things have been rough for you, Nyargh. Eating is such a fundamental part of life. It must have been hard, wanting not to distance people, but at the same time needing to keep such a big secret. I get it now, how much you must have had to work towards it. So I really appreciate you telling me. It means a lot to me that you trust me with that information. I don't think of you any differently for it, of course. I know you're kind to people regardless. And you've always been considerate toward me in a way that I know isn't just to keep yourself full. I've always been happy to be around you. Sincerely, thank you. A gentle touch slithers up my back as Nyargh's tentacles wind around my shoulders, my sides, my chest, pulling me close. Nyargh's whole body smells faintly of honey, but also of his own natural spicy scent, and it tickles at my nose as I lean into the embrace. He's wonderfully warm to be this close to. I can feel every breath that heaves from the core of his body, tickling past my skin.
No, thank you, Vil. I've been keeping this secret for so long, but for you, I knew you would still trust me.
Of course. Nothing could make me doubt you, Nyargh.
Except when I dealt with Yiestol.
We stay like that for a good few moments, and then Nyargh slowly withdraws his tentacles, taking that as a signal. I disentangle myself from his tendrils and step back. After that display of vulnerability, Nyargh seems uncharacteristically awkward, fidgeting with a tiny portion of salt still out on the counter. It's up to me to break the silence. So I guess you only need to eat that much salt today. Nyargh sighs, rubbing a tendril against a spot between two of his mouths.
Actually, I meant to eat this much to keep myself at peak condition, but with all the excitement and energy in the air, I'm unspeakably full. I feel like I might be sick if I had to eat this, so I'd been stalling when you showed up. In some ways, inviting you in was just an excuse to stall more time.
I can't help but laugh. It's such an innocently childish action that it seems at odds with Nyargh's mature, calm demeanor. Nyargh huffs as if embarrassed, wrapping the salt back up in its paper packet. Sorry, I didn't mean to laugh. I just didn't expect it from you. But I'm really glad it happened. I wouldn't have gotten to know you better like this otherwise, so I'm happy to have been your excuse. Nyargh nods, but the touch of warmer color in his flesh suggests he's also happy with the arrangement.
Now then.
Stepping out from around the counter, Nyargh heads towards the window. I put down the bee I'd been holding, then follow him.
It certainly doesn't look like the commotion outside is going to die down anytime soon.
He's right. If anything, the crowd's grown even larger. Someone is jostled by the crowd and stumbles into the window, and he at least shoots us an apologetic glance through the gap in the curtain before returning his attention to whatever has captivated the crowd.
I suppose you could just try to run past them. You're a quick runner. Are you on a tight schedule today?
Oh, to be honest, I have today off, and I don't have any plans. I just wanted to drop by and see how you were doing.
I see. That's very sweet of you.
Nyargh reaches out a tentacle to pat me on the back.
Then maybe it would be best for us to spend the day quietly, especially if we don't have any plans for the eclipse.
What were you planning on doing today before I got here?
Clean the bee cages mostly and groom some of them if I had the time.
I can help if you'd like.
So eager to work on your day off?
One mouth twists into a lopsided grin, another one baring its teeth in a rumbling laugh.
Your diligence always astounds me.
Well, I figure as long as I'm here, I should do something. And yesterday was fun. I don't mind the work, and if it's helpful to you, I want to do it.
If you insist. Come on. Let's start with cleaning the cages.
Cleaning the cages ends up taking up the entirety of the morning and a good portion of the afternoon. Enough that Nyargh decides to amend the store in the window, saying he's closed today.
Brain struggling.
It's Eclipse Day after all, no need to feel bad about taking the day off. Once we're done cleaning, the store's air feels bitingly fresh, the sharp scent of cleaning herbs stinging into the nose of each inhale, but it's soon tempered by the soothing aroma of bee pheromones and honey as Nyargh moves on to grooming several bees whose fur coats are growing unruly. The bees relax beneath the steady snip-snip of Nyargh's shears drooling honey onto the grooming mat. I mostly watch as this work requires training and finesse that I don't have. It's wonderfully relaxing. Time goes by quickly, and before I even realize it, it's nearing the time of the eclipse. Nyargh has to point it out to me.
It's grown awfully noisy outside.
Oh, you're right. I pull the curtains back just enough to take a quick peek outside. The crowd outside the blood sample store has dispersed at least, but the streets are noisier than ever. People mill about, holding hands and tugging each other along, pointing off in different directions. I need to press my ear against the glass to understand what's going on. Oh, the eclipse is soon. I think everyone's trying to find good places to watch it.
Ah, I see.
Vil? I let the curtain drop as I look back down. At the back of my mind, I hope nobody saw that. I wouldn't want anyone to notice the store's occupied and barge in asking to be let up on the roof for the good view.
If you don't have any other plans for the eclipse, would you like to watch it with me?
Of course. Nyargh might have expected me to hesitate from the way he worded it, but it's an easy answer for me to give. I'd love to watch it with you. Should we head up to the roof?
Wait just a moment.
Nyargh wants to prepare a few things first. A small container of salt biscuits and another set of tea. Because it wouldn't hurt to enjoy ourselves during this special occasion, he says. and once the preparations are made, we head up to the ladder that leads to the roof of the store. The view from the roof is nice. There are higher buildings around, of course, as well as ones with tall spires. The view from those high places must be fabulous, I imagine. Dang, it looks so, like, apocalyptic. But for the two of us, the roof of Nyargh's store is perfect. There are empty crates here and there, formerly used to store old supplies in broken containers, and Nyargh drags a few closer to the edge so we can take a seat. And we share the tea and biscuits. Are you excited, Nyargh?
Somewhat, but not as much as most people, I imagine.
Probably not. I laugh as I take a sip of my tea. Around us, people are starting to bustle onto the rooftops, others leaning out their windows to get good looks at the sky. Some whoop and shout with excitement, others popping open expensive bottles of honeyed liquor. All around us, people exude excitement and anticipation. This isn't too much for you, is it? The atmosphere, you know? Nyargh seems to get what I mean after a moment, and his mouths break into grins. One tentacle reaches forward to brush the hair from my face and pat me on the shoulder.
I'm perfectly fine, thanks for asking. No need to worry about me, especially now that it's begun.
The tentacle on my shoulder shifts up past my cheek to point towards the sky. And as we raise our gazes up past the horizon, we see the suns begin to collide. The light is almost blinding when the sun's shape begins to overlap, their glows combining into something truly radiant. The warmth that washes over us seems to magnify twofold, threefold. More than one person below on the street shouts in delight, followed by murmurs of amazement. I scoot over on my crate, thoughtlessly pulling myself closer to Nyargh, and he drapes a tentacle over my shoulder. Even before the moon begins to eat away at the sun's shapes, something deep within us screams that this is a special moment, that something monumental is about to begin, and we do not want to be alone during it. My fingers wrap around the tip of Nyargh's tentacle, squeezing around its warm, fleshy tip, but we remain silent as the skies begin to darken. The change is immediate. As soon as the moon's outline begins carving into the sun's glow, the skies lose that magnificent luster. An odd murmur washes through the crowd on the streets, and even those sitting on rooftops or leaning out the windows try to get a closer look. The light bouncing off the clouds is also distorted, throwing crescent-shaped shadows on the ground in spots. I inadvertently grip a little tighter at Nyargh's tentacle, watching as the moon continues its march across the sky, uncaring as to what lies in its path. The suns, meanwhile, have already completely overlapped with each other, cowering in unison behind the moon. Bit by bit, they vanish. An incredible heaviness bears down upon us as soon as the moon completely masks the suns. A strange pressure like an invisible hand reaching down from the skies aiming to crush us. Every sound feels magnificent. And I'm startled when a small child shouts from the streets, followed immediately by a parent trying to shush them. Talking feels taboo, moving feels taboo, even looking away feels like it should not be permitted. It feels like the world itself is telling us, this is a moment we must not take for granted. We are in the presence of something monumental. I can feel Nyargh's core shift slightly with every breath, but neither of us says a word. Whoa. That's crazy. So green. And though I don't dare drag my eyes from the sky, not while the moon still looms above us, ringed only by the thinnest circle of sunlight, I can see the rest of the cityscape out of the periphery of my vision. The various shapes and structures around us are lit eerily, thin streaks of light throwing their edges into sharp contrast against their shadowed sides. For one instant, the city feels like a complete foreign place, like a place I should not be. A deep rasping exhale leaves my lungs, catching me by surprise. I must have been holding my breath. It's difficult even breathing during this eclipse. But then the spell breaks. The eclipse's arresting hold on us dissipates as quickly as it started. The sun struggled past the moon's shadow, bathing us in that familiar light once more. Bit by bit, the skies light up once more. Stray whoops and hollers begin to ring out from all around us, as if people are ecstatic to realize they've survived something deadly. I give a long, slow exhale once more, trying to calm my own pounding heart. When I pull my hand away from Nyargh's tentacle, I realize I must have been subconsciously gripping it with all my strength. The tip is flush and my fingers have left marks.
Don't worry about it.
Nyargh addresses it before I can apologize.
I would have done the same. The eclipse really is something.
We're both still a little quiet as we clean up the remnants of our snacks. Even once the cityscape around us is lit up, like usual once more, the street below us busy from the crowds of people steadily dispersing. We both find our thoughts lingering with that eclipse. It would have that effect on everyone, I'm sure. Even though I don't truly believe in the superstition that the eclipse is the best day for making big decisions, I'm starting to understand why people might hold that belief. And if someone were to ask me to make a big decision right at this moment, I feel like I might be able to say yes.
Vil.
I'd helped him clean up the store and started heading towards the door when Nyargh stops me. Yeah?
I know I've already asked a lot of you today, telling you the truth about myself and expecting you to still trust me, accepting your help in cleaning the store and tending to my work, and watching the eclipse together. But if you'd allow me, I'd like to make one more request of you.
If it's something I can help you with, I'd be happy to. My answer slips out without a second thought. Nyargh, however, stalls for a moment. Two of his tentacles knead at each other, and I'm slow to realize it's a sign of nervousness. It's a slight edge to his voice that makes me realize Nyargh's request this time won't be anything so trivial.
Your acceptance meant a lot to me, as did your companionship. I've come to truly value you during our time knowing each other. So, Vil, would you be my partner?
Even though he looks like a giant meatball, it's kind of cute that he's just like, oh, would you be my partner?
Would you be mine?
My heart stops in my chest. I'm not sure if I expected this question or not.
Oh man, I'm gonna feel bad when I say no.
But seeing Nyargh's reaction, I can't bring myself to hesitate. After all, he'd already spent years keeping a painful secret to himself, and I didn't want to make him wait any longer. And besides, in my heart, I already knew my answer.
Let's go, Meatball Man!
Of course, Nyargh, I will.
You will?
I nod decisively. I didn't notice until Bratton's, but like their hands are in the portrait. So I think Yiestol's was probably there, but I didn't notice. I saw Bratton's claw on the left side, so it was kind of like obscured by the dialogue, and then you see the tentacle, which is also kind of awkward. Nyargh, the fact that you trusted me enough to tell me your secret means a lot to me. I've always considered you a good friend, of course, but being with you today, learning more about you made me realize how comfortable I feel around you. You're amazing, I think. Not many people can be as kind and considerate as you, especially when they're harboring such a difficult secret. So if I can be by your side more and learn about you more, be closer to you, I want to do it. I want to be your partner. Nyargh seems stunned at first.
Tentacle.
Then his tentacles reach forward in a flurry of movement.
I can't with that pus, man. It's so gross.
They wind around me, encasing me in a gentle but firm warmth as he pulls me closer, much closer.
Thank you, Vil, thank you. You don't understand how happy you've made me.
Damn, I didn't realize how huge he is also.
Giant meatball.
From this proximity, his voice sounds so much deeper. Each time he exhales, his breath glasses warm against my skin, and I wrap my arms around his tentacles to embrace him. I'm really glad we're both happy. Even when I pull back, one of his tendrils lingers against me as if wanting to maintain the contact. And upon closer inspection, I can tell it's the one I'd been gripping during the eclipse. It still had a few dark marks right where my fingers squeezed at it. I guess I got a little ahead of myself wanting to hold you. Nyargh chuckles, brushing the tentacle up against my cheek.
Just a little bit. But that's not a bad thing.
Nyargh has always been comfortable to be around. His presence has always been soothing. I've always been aware of it since I started delivering to his store. But here and now it feels completely different. We share a secret, and we share a very special moment together beneath that darkened sky lit only by the ring of the eclipse. Even if neither one of us truly believes in the auspicious powers of the eclipse, we can't help feeling like something special brought us together. It's all the more reason we want to be close to each other, to get to know each other more, to be with each other. Nyargh's body is warm, much warmer than I'd anticipated. I mean, like, it's a tentacle, but it's still a little suggestive, as you will. I noticed before that his tentacles are warm, of course. The flesh is sensitive in spots, throbbing beneath the touch of my fingers. Some are thicker than others, some are very sensitive, and some are frail, while others are strong enough to easily lift me off my feet. But all of them are perfectly gentle as they glide across my body, never letting me forget their presence. Even when one coils around my waist, lifting me up effortlessly, the tentacle flesh is soft and careful. Nyargh treats me like something precious he would never want to break, even as he surrounds me. Not an inch of my body goes untouched, it feels like. Though the tentacles vary in size and function, all of them are dexterous, and they never stop roaming my body in search of unexplored places. The inside of my thigh, the underside of my rib cage, the deep furrows between the spines on my back, the spot at the bottom of my abdomen, the nape of my neck, the curve of my collarbones. They touch me in spots I'm not used to being touched, insistently making their presence known. It's almost cruel how Nyargh is able to do so much to me while I have a harder time doing the same. He laughs when I tell him as much. The tendril looped around my waist pulls me closer until the very core of his body hangs close above my back. From this proximity, I can almost feel each breath and throb of his body. I can hear the slick of saliva each time he licks his lips, the rush of blood through the fine veins of his tentacles. I can see the way his body continues to flush darker. I've just been curious. I'm like, what the hell are, like, these? And it's just globs of meat. Can see the way his body continues to flush darker. Even as he says... What? Something doesn't mean to tease me. He continues to explore. A tentacle reaches up to touch against my temple, then very gently drags downward, brushing against my cheek. In some small act of revenge, I take it in my hands and bite the tip. I don't bite hard, of course, just hard enough for him to feel the slight nip of teeth. The tentacle jumps in response, twitching sharply in my hands, perhaps from the pain, perhaps from the slick feeling inside my mouth, perhaps both. Either way, I find myself enjoying that reaction, so I continue. If Nyargh wants to explore my body, he can. I'll even help him feel everything there is to fear. To what? Wait. I'll even help him feel everything there is to fear. Question mark. When I touch my tongue against the tip of the tentacle, it jolts again. The various tentacles wound around my body slow down as if to say point taken. I laugh as best as I can around that mouthful of Nyargh's tentacle and pull my head back just enough to give him a kiss. Then I let him touch out my tongue once more to encourage him. After so much time spent keeping his distance and keeping his secret, he's earned the right to be as close as he likes, I think. Nyargh continues to explore and I gladly welcome it, moving to allow him more and more access to myself. The inside of my throat, the sensitive dip below my sternum, the deepest, most intimate parts of my body, we get to experience them together. Stepping onto the streets the day after the eclipse is a surreal feeling. Overnight, it seems the city reverted back to its usual self. People tromp about at leisurely paces, pause to greet each other and ask how they are. The atmosphere is pleasant but tranquil. Only traces of the eclipse remain. Stores that don't open their doors again because the owner left for other adventures, the remains of celebratory banners strung over some doorways, an abandoned honey liquor container here and there. It's impossible for anyone to forget the eclipse actually happened. Anyone who witnessed the way the skies went dark would surely remember it for a long time to come. But we all have to move on. Of course, I resume my usual route the following day. My boss and I only have a few moments to talk about how our eclipses went. His went wonderfully, he says, and mine as well, I say. It's a simple answer, but that's all I really need to say. My route stays largely the same regardless of the eclipse. Only the amount of salt varies slightly, and that's trivial. But there is one significant difference. Near the end of my route, I find my feet moving faster, my pace quickening. My claws kick off the dirt quickly enough to leave small dust clouds in my wake, and I need to brace myself hard to avoid skidding around a corner as I head down a familiar stretch of the street. Even from blocks away, a familiar scent greets me as if welcoming me home. Nyargh's store. It becomes the highlight of my everyday, getting to throw the door open and greet Nyargh, regardless if he's requested a delivery that day or not. And he always greets me with open tentacles, embracing me and holding me close, like something he never wants to let go. And Nyargh's route did end up being a lot more normal compared to the other two. That's actually so funny. Cause Nyargh's whole appearance is very like foreign and the rumors and stuff made it seem like we were gonna end up encountering something crazy. But in the end, it was just super normal. I don't even know what to say. I think, despite Nyargh's appearance, he is very sweet, and he has a dope place. It's so nice. It compared to the way our room looks like, it's so warm and like welcoming. Like, it'd be the perfect place to take a nap. And I'm also jealous because I really want to pet the bees, and I won't be able to ever. I mean, I could pet a real life bee, but it's just not the same as giant bee. Come on. Anyways, we're gonna have to reload and go the I'm sorry, but I have to reject you option, and I'm gonna feel kind of bad. I'm sorry, Nyargh. It hurts me to say it, but if Nyargh was honest with me, I want to be equally honest with him. You're a really dear friend to me, and I still care about you a lot. Today was a really special day to me, and I'll always be really grateful that you chose to trust me with your secret, but I don't think I would be comfortable as your partner. I'm very sorry. Why did you say it like that? You could have just been like, I only see you as a friend. You, Vil! You make it sound so bad.
Vil, there's no need to apologize.
Nyargh reaches towards me, and it's incredibly gentle when he wraps a tentacle around my shoulders.
I understand. You don't need to give me excuses. It's perfectly fine if you don't want to.
I nod, swallowing past a lump in my throat, and Nyargh withdraws his tentacle.
Then, can we at least remain friends?
Of course! I blurted out the answer almost before the questions left Nyargh's lips. Of course I want to. You're still my friend.
That's all I need then.
He beckons me towards the door, showing no signs of hesitation or awkwardness, and as he holds the door open for me, he gives a deep nod.
Please don't worry about what I asked. It truly isn't important. All that matters to me is that I can remain your friend. And thank you for choosing to spend this day with me.
Nyargh, thanks. I'm really glad I got to spend today with you. I walk home slowly, feeling the day's exhaustion start to catch up to me. Though my delivery route entails a lot more walking than I did today, I feel oddly drained. When I go home, I collapse in bed and fall into a deep, dark sleep. In my dreams, I see Nyargh, but no matter how hard I try, I can't reach him. He's always just a little out of reach, lingering a short distance away, as kind as ever, but never any closer. His voice is muffled that way, and I can't see his smiles. I want to close the distance between us, but it's impossible. The dreams feel so vivid, but they also vanish quickly, leaving a few traces behind. And with that, we're both back to our usual lives. Vil, why do you always have these dreams? Every time! I have my route to run, my deliveries to make, my daily routine to keep up. Nyargh's store remains a place of respite. I find myself lingering there for a rest whenever I have some extra time during my route, or if I don't have too many deliveries to make on those days. Nyargh often asks me to help with small chores, paying me in snacks and tea. It's a comfortable arrangement, and I'm glad to have gotten to know Nyargh a little better. I do find myself periodically wondering how different things would be now if I'd said yes back then. If I'd decided to fully accept Nyargh as my partner, what would we have done that night? The night after that, the next week, the next month? But there's no use dwelling over things like that, I decide in the end. What's done is done. Either way, I'm content to return to my quiet life with a closer connection to a friend. And I don't know, like, Vil, do you just secretly, like, even if we say no, do you actually want to? Because every time you have a dream, that's just like, oh, but what if? You make me feel bad for you specifically, Vil. Like, I end up separating myself, like, immediately. And we're gonna go back to see if there's any ending for if I just don't stay with anyone. Apologize and get going. It's too bad, but I don't want to risk delaying anyone's deliveries. Sorry, Nyargh, but I don't want to be late on anyone's delivery today since the eclipse is tomorrow and all. Nyargh is silent for a moment, just his tentacles diligently working away before giving a small nod.
Alright,
I'm really sorry. I wish I could help. I could come around after my route's over if you need any help closing up shop. He shakes his head no. He's clearly already divided his focus, concentrating mostly on helping his customers. I can't blame him. There are already a few tutting and fidgeting impatiently. No doubt they think I'm holding up the line. It's alright. The worst of the rush will be over soon. You should rest up after your work. Are you sure? It's no trouble coming by after my route. He nods. It'll be fine. I feel a bit like a curtain's fallen between us. It's not that I've done something terrible in failing to help Nyargh, but I do feel like I've missed an opportunity I could have taken, perhaps should have taken, but I can't take back what I've said, and hopefully he'll understand. I don't want to cause any trouble for anyone by being late on my route. I hesitate for a moment before tightening my bundle across my shoulders. Alright then, hopefully things won't be too hard for you. We're nearing the end of the day after all. My bundle's grown pretty light over the day, but that doesn't mean my remaining deliveries are any less important. I should go tend to them. Take care. Most of Nyargh's tentacles are hard at work, and he only gives me a brief glance before returning all of his focus to his work. He deftly wraps up 3 separate bottles at the same time, a pair of tentacles soothing, an agitated bee that's attempted to hide under the counter. I consider waving a small goodbye as I step away from the counter, but I refrain to keep from breaking his focus. The crowd outside the store has thinned out a little bit, but it's still sizable. At least those people from earlier who've been gossiping have either gotten into the store or wandered off. Tired of waiting, I gingerly squeeze my way past the waiting line and back into the streets, inhaling deeply. Already the sweet scent of honey is much thinner, cut through with the musty smell natural to the air. Overhead, the skies are starting to streak through the darker shades of green as the sun dips towards the horizon. Though there's the strong urge to linger to wait and see if the store will quiet down a little, I know I shouldn't. So I don't look back as I dig my heels into the ground and take off at a quick sprint down the street. At least these last few deliveries won't take too long.
Thanks, Vil. Seems like you had a busy day.
Yeah, things have been a little hectic.
You got here on time, though, and with a little time to spare.
Yeah, I did. I smile at that, but I'm sure it comes out a little defeated. My last few deliveries ended up going more smoothly than I expected. I'd worried that it would be a race against the clock up to the last delivery, but I ended up having some time left over. Maybe I overestimated how long the deliveries would take. I panicked a little.
Well, I appreciate all your hard work. You should go rest up. Tomorrow's going to be a big day after all.
It sure is. Have a good night.
You too.
I end up taking the long route back home, backtracking a little. I walk past Nyargh's store, which has gone quiet by this time. I can still see flickers of movement inside, but it looks like it's mostly just Nyargh cleaning up the store by himself. I consider going in to offer to help, but it would feel a little gormless after he told me not to, so I refrain. I cut through the park. The atmosphere here is different from after dark. The spindly trees casting twisting shadows across the uneven ground. The air feels colder too, and it feels different without Bratton's boisterous presence walking by me. I walk past the Overlook office, which continues to watch silently over the city, the spire's eyeballs lazily cast over the landscape, though they blink slowly now and again, as if growing tired. Yiestol must be getting drained after keeping watch over all the day's events. I give the spire a small wave, but I'm almost certain Yiestol wouldn't have seen it. My thoughts feel fuzzy as I walk back home, watching the 3 suns sink out of view, one at a time. When I get back to my place, I just grab a packet of salt and collapse on my bed. I don't usually eat in bed, but I'm too tired to care today. I roll over on my back to unwrap the fabric and drowsily bite off a small mouthful of salt. The familiar sting spreads through my mouth, hot and sharp, and I try not to think about it as I chew. Even eating feels exhausting for some reason. I turn my head to glance towards the window. Past the closed curtains, I can see a sliver of the night sky. 2 moons lazily traversing that dark expanse. My mouth hurts from a second bite of salt. I'm probably done eating for the evening. I do the bare minimum to wrap the salt back up so it won't scatter over my bed during the night, but that's the absolute limit of my energy for the night. Even knowing I have to get up to clean up before falling asleep, my limbs feel so leaden and I find myself drifting off. And as my eyes close, I wonder what tomorrow will be like, what everyone will be doing during the eclipse. A lot ended up happening on the day of the eclipse. Bratton went missing, which was the most alarming. It seems he went somewhere on the day of the eclipse and never returned. I ran into some of the other Salt Scouts later who said that Bratton had found something amazing and probably went off to explore it more thoroughly. They said he was probably fine, but just didn't feel like coming back after his big discovery. It wasn't the most comforting thing to hear, admittedly, but I wanted to believe that Bratton was doing fine. It grew much harder to meet Yiestol shortly after, too. He spent a lot more time inside the Overlook pod, locked away in that flesh shell, and the other workers at the office would often accept my deliveries instead. They explained that Yiestol had undergone a big change during the eclipse, which allowed him to work more efficiently than ever. The city became really safe and peaceful after that, but I did miss getting to see Yiestol in the mornings. Nyargh's store remained the same as ever. In fact, almost nothing changed on that front. I continued to deliver to him, and he continued to quietly tend his bees. Sometimes I'd linger to pamper one of the bees, but he never asked me for anything again. Even when I offered to help, he'd politely decline, saying that he was fine, and maybe he was, but the sense that I'd missed something important still lingered. The eclipse itself was beautiful, of course. Watching the moon impose itself over all three suns and blanket the sky in darkness and midday was as captivating as I'd expected. Even more so, maybe. I could see why this was such a big deal. But that was the end of it. The eclipse lasted for a few minutes, and that was it for me. Though the streets were filled with celebrations for hours afterward as people professed their love for each other or committed risky crimes or dramatically changed the courses of their lives. My life continued quietly on its way, like a vine crawling across a rock, slow and steady and subtle. And though part of me will always wonder if things could have, or should have been different, what's done is done. All I can do is continue to work and help others as much as I can. I'm happy with where my life is, and I'd like to keep things that way. And kind of sad. Everybody had an exciting thing or whatever, and I was just like, yeah, it was pretty cool, I guess. But, like, Bratton disappeared. Yiestol is, like, I don't know how long he's gonna be in that pod, so that's another friend down. And then I thought I was gonna be friends with Nyargh, but that we're a lot more separated than expected. Anyways, that was meeting in the flesh. It was very interesting to go through, because normally majority of the romance visual novels would be just humans, or if they're slightly animalistic or monstrous in any way, it doesn't mean that the whole world is different. And that's the thing that made me very interested, that the world was so different. And I'm so curious, like, if there's other aspects of the world that the creator had noted down, like how things work in their society and stuff. It seems that there is also like possibly a lot of cultures, because there's so many different species. And I think one of my favorite things might be like how bugs are used. I feel like, was there something that used bugs too as like items? But it's like, it's fun and interesting to like go through it, even though it is gross. Everything's so fleshy. I could not. And then the fact that they only really eat salt and stuff is also interesting. It makes me wonder like how their world developed and stuff. Just like a whole like history and knowing how every aspect works, how the world actually like looks. Like if we could get like a view of how their world looks as a planet, and then like see other areas, because that one part with Bratton's where it was like flesh and hair, I was like, oh, what? Like, is their world like a huge living entity, and they're just like things living on the surface, just organisms living on the surface and stuff? It's so weird. Not a surprise at all, Bratton was my favorite. Both just him as his doggy self, and when he was turned into a human. I just like the whole interaction with Bratton and Vil and how everything went. My least favorite, I'm gonna have to say it's Saul, just because I got eaten. I still feel like Bratton's is like the sort of like safer option because they do turn into humans after, so it's just like, oh, that's familiar. That's familiar to me. And then so it'd be like Bratton and then Nyargh because it was very like simple. Like sure tentacles were involved, but like there's nothing like crazy really about it. And then it'd be Yiestol because like Jesus Christ. I really thought there would be like a big change like the other two, but the real change was very simple and it was just that they became partners. Romantic partners. I would really like to know which one of our suitors did you guys like? I just want to know. I just want to know if anyone picked Nyargh. Do you like him, the meatball? Our precious meatball man. Thank you, if you made it to the end, for watching Meeting in the Flesh. It was a very interesting and entertaining experience to go through. And it'd be fun to do more, like, unique romance visual novels. If I could find them. I hope you guys have a good day and a good night. And I hope to see you in anything else.
Bye-bye.